He can't get sick, right? Like he's
He's invincible. He stays in the booth. It's a safe
Okay,
zone.
good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for February meeting. I'd like to call to order the Economic Development Commission meeting of February 3rd. Thank you for, again, all your time at our retreat a couple weeks back. It hasn't been too much time since we had that really good, I think, strategic conversation, and looking forward to what follows for the rest of the year. But let's kick off today's meeting with an approval for the draft minutes from our January meeting.
so move.
Second.
Second. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much, Councilor Lombardi. And next on our agenda, we've got our annual chair, vice chair elections. Did circulate a note yesterday just informing that we'd be doing this. It's generally something that we're intended to do in January, so I didn't want to get too much further in the year. I know last year we adopted a change to our policies and procedures to institute a 3-year maximum, but we do still have the annual requirement. So Alan and I have talked, and should the commission so choose, I think both of us are willing to continue in our current roles. But as part of today's procedures, I'd like to codify that. So would entertain any discussion, or should anyone have a motion?
Chair, I'd move to renominate Phil Cohen for chair of the EDC.
And second that?
I've got to pass the gavel to Alan to.
Yes, and I'll entertain a motion to, we have to do that back. We're doing it backwards.
Can I call for a vote on myself?
No, I can call for a vote.
If there's a motion on the floor.
You know, it's early, people. Please excise, Kevin, excise that from the procedure. Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Congratulations, Mr. Cohen.
Appreciate everyone's support this year, so looking forward to another fruitful year. So that
You have to nominate Alan, too.
have to nominate Alan too.
You don't have
Oh, we don't
to.
have to.
You don't have to.
So nominate someone else.
Yes, that would be fine.
So we do need a vice chair.
I will make the motion that we nominate Alan Gold as vice chairperson.
And second it?
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. The motion passes. Thank you, Alan. Off to 2023.
Yay for us.
So the next item we've got on today's agenda, this is meant to refer to an email that had been circulated by the executive director of the Portsmouth Housing Authority. I know Craig Welch had circulated an email or a request for support to the business community, and Alan had shared that as a recipient of that. So I thought, given what conversation we had at this meeting last month, along with the conversation at the retreat about supporting projects, I just wanted to bring that to this group. I know since we had circulated this agenda, there has been a neighborhood meeting, so clearly want to recognize the ongoing discussion, and that has just begun, but wanted to come back to this group to see if this was an opportunity for us to begin to contemplate where we might be able to lend our support or give our counselors some feedback on the matter, as they are likely to take up something in consideration in the near future. So I guess I would open it up to the floor to see if we feel like now is an appropriate time to start that conversation. Tom?
I guess I'd start with a question, which is, are you interested in having us vote on or endorse the concept of developing the Sherburne School property for housing or for a specific proposal?
My response to that would be, I feel like we don't have a specific proposal, so we certainly can't vote on anything to indicate our support yet. So I guess I look at this as us deciding to do exactly what you just outlined as a first step now, or if we want to wait to understand timing and how the actual formal request of the project might move forward. But I don't know that we'll know that, so I guess I would defer to our counselors to see if it would be helpful to have a general endorsement of that at this moment for the housing concept, or if it might be better to pause.
No, go ahead.
I think we could definitely
potentially broaden it to our support of affordable housing on any city-owned property that is left for redevelopment. As this project pertains, it will be referred to the Land Use Committee, and the Land Use Committee will be undertaking the task that we've been doing for the last year of looking at city-owned plots and their potential redevelopment. So if we as a commission want to kind of tie into that we support, I think, very broad brush of redevelopment of city-owned property into affordable and or workforce housing. I think that would be a kind of even-toned.
Balanced. Thank you. Tom?
I have a little concern about a complete broad position of supporting the use of any city-owned property for housing, because I think each property ought to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. We've talked before about the fact that there is land within industrially zoned areas that could be converted for housing, and I think we need to look at that on a case-by-case basis, weighing the needs for certain segments of the business community for growth versus the need for having adequate housing for all the employees. So I'm a little concerned about making that broad vote, but I'm prepared, and I would make a motion that we endorse the use of the Sherburne School property for housing, again, without endorsing a specific proposal that hasn't been presented yet. I mean, we've seen the drawing that was in the paper, but it's not clear that that's going to be the final outcome.
Jacob?
Just out of interest, I've seen a few articles, but what was the kind of community feedback? Maybe the counselors know a little bit better. Was it positive, generally negative? I saw a lot of different articles flown around, so I just want to get a more general idea.
So I think it's, the way it was run, it got a little crazy, I think, a little bit. There's definitely some concern from some people in the Panaway neighborhood. There's definitely some support from people in the Panaway neighborhood. I think, my honest opinion is, again, we don't have any formal proposals. We don't have any formal renderings. So for a first step of the discussion, I think there is general neighborhood concern, as there would be with any type of development. The same that has gone on in the private development sector, that there's always been concern when we're looking at kind of what potentially could be larger scale. But again, I would like to press that there's been no formal application to the city, to any of the land use boards, to anything like that.
Okay. So it's really just like kind of a concept right now. It's not even, there's not much else really, the first
Correct.
step. Okay.
Correct.
Early concept.
Yeah.
Early concept. And I think that has concerned some people, that based on PHA's statement, that if they were looking to get this project done in a hasty timeline, that they would need to have everything approved for their application of federal tax credits by August. And I think that the overall takeaway that I took is that people wanted to make sure that it wasn't a rushed process.
Okay. Thank you.
Good question.
I think
Councilmember.
some other uses of that property too were brought up, and not to the exclusion of housing, but maybe limiting the housing and retaining some other uses there as well. I think it's a complex question right now, and as
You can just say Jill.
was said, the biggest takeaway is slow down. I think that was really the biggest takeaway from that meeting. Slow down. Let's think about this more carefully.
I agree. I talked to the guy who was circulating a petition against the project. And, I listened to the concerns, and a lot of it was, this is kind of being, shoved down our throats, and we don't have a say, and that was the biggest takeaway. That, and I think, frankly, some distrust of the city in general. some of that probably ties into McIntyre and what's going on there, and is it transparent and that kind of thing, so.
Yeah, I think when you go to some of the neighborhoods that are really fine out, that feel somewhat forgotten by the city. I mean, I live in one in Maple Haven that feels like we don't get sidewalks, we don't get attention, and now you want to, now you're looking at taking potentially this plot of land that we feel like is a defined and asset to our neighborhood.
Well, if anyone forgot about that neighborhood, I think they were reminded the other night because that gym was full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, parking, the car's 100 yards down the road on either side. So it's a big neighborhood.
Oh, absolutely.
There are a lot of people there.
That neighborhood reminds me of other places I've lived in Boston, where there are neighborhoods that are geographically separated from the rest of the city. South Boston, for example, and I worked in South Boston for a long time, and it's insular but tight, and that's how I would. And then it has the added problem of one way in and out. It's makes it even tighter and more insular.
Right.
So, but still a very, very important neighborhood of the city, and I just really respect the input that was given and the emotion that was there.
Yeah.
Thank you. Sarah, you had, sorry, yeah.
The only question I had is, it sounds like it may be premature at this point to issue any sort of a statement because we don't have a plan in place, and blanket statements around endorsement of use of property for a particular purpose because it's an ecosystem may have an adverse impact on other uses. So I do think this is a topic that we talked about in our retreat and is part of sort of forming those position papers that we have around what we want to endorse and not endorse. So my recommendation would be, if we can get together as the Charter Vision Review Subcommittee, is to come back and present a proposal on the Sherburne School project that's tied to what we talked about at our retreat.
Great. Thank you, Alan.
Just a quick question, I guess this is for Karen. Is there a standard city process for these kinds of assessments above and beyond the land use pieces of it all? If you've got a piece of city property and someone, like a PHA says, I'd like to do something with housing, is there a standard set of activities that goes on to determine use?
That's a great question. It was not clear to me what the answer was to that, and so when I check with the legal folks, the city does have prerogative. If it has an idea in mind, an opportunity to pursue, they can. They can also take the procurement, the standard, more expected or anticipated procurement process, and solicit RFP submissions or RFQ ideas. So I think perhaps the angst of the neighborhood was that there had already been a pre-selected use and potential user for the site. So, but to short answer long is that the city does have options, but I think it's good for the city to air and talk about and share with the public all of its options.
Thank you.
Okay. I appreciate Tom's willingness for motion, but it feels like this is one we...
I'll withdraw the motion. Well, the point, however, is that I didn't want to endorse any specific project because not only the neighborhood concerns, but, there's a lot of other compatible uses that could be incorporated into that project. But, on a sort of a separate note, just reading the description of the conversation at that meeting, I again heard what I hear in virtually every project that happens in the city of Portsmouth, which is, why can't we put it at the community campus? And I just wonder, is the city going to do some type of a plan for that community campus that would let people know what direction it's going in? So it seems like,
Yeah.
It's a good-sized plot, but it's not as big as necessary to accommodate every use, including, let's put the old State House there, so.
Can I take the non-political answer to that question, and I will not field the political question? We just closed on the property 10 months ago. Our intent was to understand what we had under our roof, figurative roof, so to speak, figure out the best way to accommodate the tenants that are there in the building, figure out what's left to use in the building. What we also need to do is delineate what's buildable and what's should be clearly earmarked for never buildable with regard to the rest of the property. So that's one part of the answer.
Great, thank you. Ann?
I can speak to it a little bit. The JSA was the architect for Community Campus, and we've sort of stayed with it the whole, I think it's 22 years of doing regular evaluations and doing some additions there. When they added the tennis courts, I'm fuzzy as to when that was, maybe 8-10 years ago. It was very difficult to find a parcel of land, a buildable parcel big enough to hold tennis courts. And I'm not sure how many courts there are. 4, maybe? 2?
They're going to
it's
be
not like
pickleball
it's-
courts, but I think there's 2 tennis courts there.
Okay, that piece of tennis courts was really tough to find. So I do hear people talking about all this buildable land at Community Campus. In my office, there's just eye-rolling about it. So we pulled the site plan to look at the wetlands and the setbacks, and the site plan is from 1998, and water moves, and it doesn't tend to move down, it tends to move up in our era. So we don't even think that what we thought was buildable back in 2000, we think that's probably shrunk. So the first step is to have a new site plan, and I mean Altus or whoever, whatever engineering firm, walking the site and mapping out where those wetlands are today before you can begin to understand what's buildable. But I don't think there's a large affordable housing complex buildable there, unless it's up on stilts. But it's not got contiguous spaces that are desirable.
And that was my understanding at the time it was built out. But I don't think the population understands that. So literally, every conversation that has to do with land use seems to come around to,
I know.
let's put the
And I mean,
police station down there, let's put
everything there.
Everything.
Dust hasn't quite settled on the building itself.
Yeah.
Until Lister moves in, people are going to get rearranged, possibly, depending on best use of spaces. And I don't think you can start that planning of what's going to come around it until you've finished the interior of the building. So it's coming. I'm sure there'll be some sort of master plan and delineation of what's usable there, but it's not going to be a large housing complex.
I do. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No.
I was going to say, and again, one of the things the land use committee will be undertaking is an assessment like this of city-owned property. And so I think once that is done, that will come forward and kind of show. For me personally, and I feel the same, I feel like I speak for some councilors too, we've really been in the mindset of we need to let that place settle. We need to, get the building, like Ann just said, where it's going to be and the tenants in there, and really let our facilities people too on the city staff side get, all of that under control and under their helm before we look at what we potentially have to build there. And please correct me if I'm wrong. Sherburne, Lister Academy we're looking at a 24 relocation there, correct?
Correct.
Yes. So really, in my opinion, is really not touching that until 25. Letting the school get in there, letting them get settled, and then seeing, what possibilities. But I would agree with you that it seems to be that whenever there's, and that was discussed a lot. Why aren't we doing this at Community Campus? The city bought Community Campus. There's all this land out there. But again, I think, there's a lot of the city-owned property that we own is a lot of wetlands. So I agree with you. And once that's done, I'll make sure I bring that back to the EDC so that we can discuss that amongst this commission too.
Just a quick question. I should know the answer. I don't. The land use committee, is that a permanent committee that's been added to the city structure, or is that a short-term, do this work and dissolve?
That's a great question. Structurally?
So we've discussed several options of once the goals are kind of done, of what that looks like, if that turns into a potential housing committee, into a city land committee. But at this point, there's no end date to that committee.
But I also think it's not in the ordinance either.
It's not.
There's no permanency to the committee.
Correct.
But I think the idea is it works and then it evolves.
Yes. And this will be our first meeting today with the new Community Housing Navigator, which I think could not be a better time for them to come on board, as we're really, kind of, to some, aggressively looking at what we could do to get some workforce housing, whether that is through a partnership with PHA or through another nonprofit developer and that comes in.
Sorry, I guess the reason I ask, and I may not make friends with this statement, but the Land Use Committee, I don't want them to get distracted from what they originally intended to do. And I know part of that was to look at some city parcels, but there's a lot of great work for them to do. It's like a lot of things seems to be moving painfully slow, but but if that's the direction of council, that's the direction of council. But it just seems like they have a lot on their plate, and I'd hate to see the Sherburne School project move slower than it has to be, and I'd hate to see their other work. I just don't want to bog them down with, extra work when they're already have a pretty full docket. Is I guess where I was kind of going with that. But
Good comment. Jacob, did you have something?
Answer it.
Okay, so I think we'll continue to stay close to developments there. Sarah's suggestion is a perfect segue into our next item, but we'll continue to keep this top of mind. I think we should be ready to respond in some form once something has been more fully formed and there's some better direction. So next is our working group updates. So the Charter and Mission Review, we haven't met yet after our retreat, but my goal would be to get that group together before our next meeting with the intent to, if not have a fully drafted suggestion, if there might be any changes to our, what's captured in the ordinances, at least bring something back to this group for first discussion. But I would say, the goal would be to have some output there and an opportunity to recodify any changes within the next 2 meetings, say. So I just wanted to, go ahead, Sean.
Sorry, could you just remind me who's on that committee?
That's what exactly I was just going to
Working
do.
group, excuse me.
I had Sarah, Alan, Tom, and was it Joe or Councilor Lombardi?
Either or.
Okay.
I think it was me, but
Okay. All right. I knew it was a counselor.
Thank you.
Did I get everybody? Is there anyone not?
I thought, didn't you want to be on it?
Yeah, I can be on it too.
Okay.
Well, no, only, my notes from our
Yes.
retreat is I had your initials down.
I
So
think Vince and I both flagged it, so we're okay.
2 counselors is better than 1.
There you go.
Great.
Great, thank you.
And maybe we research this, but do we know what it would take to adopt any changes to the charter if we identify them?
Not yet, but my goal would be to maybe have what that would be for when we sit down and listen.
I can get you that information.
Okay.
And we would make sure to tie in legal with, any proposed changes and how they want that, and how that should be presented.
And I did just find this morning in what must have been the onboarding that we had when our most recent members joined us, which is a funding recommendation policy that we'll also kind of take a look at. And I'll circulate that to the broader group as well. But just to kind of take full inventory of what we have so everyone's familiar with it and what our policies are to frame everything as we move forward. So, great. Next working group update is the business retention and expansion. I don't believe there's been any meetings since our last meeting or the retreat, but you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Otherwise, I think
Yeah, there's really nothing to update.
so. That's a fast one, and not on this agenda for today. But Jacob, I do want to circle back with you and for you and I to get together before our next meeting as well.
Cool.
We feel like we've got enough work. We'll get ourselves on a standing report out as well as we start to get back together. So next is a new item on our agenda. We've added this and expect we'll have it going forward, but any update that Sean might have from his office for us?
Sure, just a couple things I've mentioned, and what I'll commit to is providing information before our next meeting in writing for you to digest, and then we can talk about it on the 3rd. But in the essence of time today, I am still moving forward on acquiring and creating a database for the Office of Economic Development, and that'll just help us with our BR&E results and our ability to have two-way communication with the business community. The second thing is there is a regional effort underway to reach out to employers and to provide them with best practices around attracting and retaining employees, talent. That's something we've been doing with our Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders Group. The state gave our Seacoast region some money, and we are engaging a Portsmouth marketing company to help us put together some videos, do some interviews with employers, what's working, what's not, and then be able to share that. So I'll have more on that in writing before our next meeting.
Great.
And the last thing that came across the wire yesterday was the Federal Small Business Administration reached out to us. There was a conversation a couple of months ago with Mike Vladich. Some of you might know that name. He's our regional SBA contact in New England. He talked to the mayor about potentially hosting a summit for small businesses with the theme of encouraging entrepreneurialism and how Portsmouth is a great place to do that, or I say New England is a great place to do that, but certainly thought about hosting it in Portsmouth. So that's something Ben and I are going to work with the SBA on, and I'll have more on that, I'm sure, in a moment. That might be late spring, summer. I'm not recalling the email. It came in last night. So that's my update from the office, and I'll commit to more next month.
Awesome. Thank you, Sean. So next we've got our council update for our councilors.
Yeah. It's been kind of busy. Obviously the Sherburne School business, but also the outdoor dining was most of the policy was approved. We are still looking at the use of sidewalks and how that will fit into the policy. And then the next thing I think of is we are voted to look at the cost of expanding the Market Square design studies to include a much larger portion of the downtown, extending to the streets coming in and out Congress. And so we're looking to see what the implications of that would be to the CIP to include that in the studies. I have some notes here, sorry. We did codify the taxi stand, the single taxi stand. We also brought other blocks of employees up to the same standard of giving an increase, a 4% increase, just so we can retain employees as well. So I think that covers all of the employees at this point now.
I think we have one more collective bargaining unit left.
Okay.
We had 10 to settle in this fiscal year, and they're trickling in. But the idea is to make sure that all employees at the appropriate time of approval of agreements get treated the same way.
I think that's been a really positive thing for working for the city. It's helped a lot. Also, I think you might know this, but our city manager has been appointed to the Pease Redevelopment Authority, and we're all excited about that. I think that it'll bring a lot more coordination between Pease and the city, so that was good too. Then I guess the other thing I had to note was the community power work session is scheduled, and that is coming up on February 13th. So it's a discussion of basically an aggregate of communities' negotiating power for the city. You got anything else?
I think you covered it smoothly. Thanks, Ken. Thanks.
I guess the only thing I would ask is the city manager if there's any kind of update she would like to give on the McIntyre, because people always ask that, what's happening with McIntyre? And I will leave that to you.
There really is no update other than the group that's trying to navigate the waters of moving a project forward to hit the stage of application for the National Park Service is still moving along. We are working in a deadline that now has an end date of March 31st.
And confident that we're going to hit that at that deadline? Hopefully.
We are trucking forward to be able to submit a deadline by March. Submit an application
That is our
by the
intent.
deadline.
I think everyone would be happy to everyone just hit the deadline, do well, and get it out for sure. Because it's always a topic that comes up around the city.
It is.
Okay, great. Thanks, councilors. So next up, we've got Ben with updates from the Chamber Collaborative.
Yeah, just a few updates this morning. Earlier this week, I believe it was Monday, although the week's a bit of a blur, we hosted a elected officials reception at the press room, and many of you were there. Thank you for participating in that and being there. At that time, we shared our chamber's legislative priorities for the year. It's the first time in ever that we have put that formal document together. So that was took a fair amount of internal work and a lot of conversation from our public policy committee and our board. So that was a big accomplishment for us. And it is the season. We are constantly monitoring bills that are taking place in the legislature and looking really closely at some great housing legislation that's been put forward that I think could really be beneficial to the Portsmouth community and trying to be supportive of that. There's some other things that we're just monitoring just to keep our eye on things. Things move quick there, and sometimes ideas come and go really fast. So I think we're all kind of waiting to see the governor's budget address, which is the 14th, I believe that's planned for. Valentine's Day seems like a strange day to release the budget, but anyways, that's what we're doing. That's how we're doing it. So, similarly, the Seacoast Chamber Alliance, the 6 Seacoast chambers, that's everything from Hampton to the Falls, which is Somersworth. We have collaborated and found a set of legislative priorities that we all agree upon as the 6 Seacoast chambers. So you'll hopefully see a press release announcement about that. It'll look very similar to Portsmouth's because that was where we started and kind of broadened it out for the Seacoast. So we're excited about that. One event coming up I will highlight is our Economic Outlook event on the 28th of February, the last day of this month. We'll be convening at the Seacoast Rep Theater that morning, 8:30, I believe. That's a Tuesday, if I'm not wrong. And we will have a federal national economist kind of share their perspective. It's wild. Every day you listen to the radio, it's like recession, boom, it's like, I don't know, it's like a very yo-yo kind of thing going on there. So we'll get a national perspective from a federal economist. Then we'll have Jeff Feingold from the New Hampshire Business Review talk about what he's seeing in the state and where our state economy is going. And then I believe we have Sean and maybe Phil, I'm not sure yet, that are going to share the results of the BRE survey and what's happening on a local level. So we're excited to get that information out there a bit more and hear that local perspective. And that's sort of the trend we've always done, is start federally and get down to the local level. So that's the 28th, 8:30 in the morning at the Rep. So hopefully you can join us for that. The last thing I'll just mention is the Chamber, I think I've mentioned this before, we are undergoing a strategic planning process. We're at the stage now where we're identifying a consultant to walk us through that process. So I imagine by the next time we meet that will have taken place and we'll have a bit more understanding of the plan. And I do think there's opportunity for at least some members of the EDC to contribute to that thoughts, and there seems to be a lot of alignment between our mission work. So I think there's an appropriate step in there where some members of this group can be engaged in helping us put together our plan for the next few years. So that's all I have. Membership seems to be good. Business community seems to be doing well. Things are good right now. So
One question, maybe for Ben or for the city manager. Are there similar initiatives in neighboring communities around repurposing city-owned or town-owned land for public good or public housing? Or is Portsmouth, are we sort of in the lead trying to identify that?
It's a great question. Similarly to how the ED directors and the chambers meet up, the town and city managers have met up. We haven't done it recently. I think some are stuck in town budget session, but that would be a good question for me to bring to that group. Funny anecdote, when I first got here, I reached out to the city and town managers around, and I said, can we meet? Can we share ideas? I'm new to this, and I'm new to this area. So we met, and I brought a notebook, and they all made fun of me for bringing a notebook to a session where you have beer and talk about, how to work together. But then we met up subsequently, and they said, where's the notebook? So they like the notebook. So it's time for me to do another notebook session with them. I do think all politics is local, and people have their own different, unique ways of doing it. But to your point, there must be good best practice. What have you done that historically, time after time, seems to work, and what's the practice you go back to? So,
If I can certainly ask my colleagues just to kind of get a primer on that. If there's things going on, they'll know about it, because we talk about housing every other week. on those
Sean and I
calls.
can tag team on that. Ben looks like he might have a thought.
Yeah, I know there are examples out there, I mean, and this is not quite similar to the Sherburne School, but if you look at the courthouse project in Dover, that is now a Chimberg property that has a lot of affordable units as part of that project. So it's not uncommon to take a government-owned building or property to repurpose it for housing or something like that. My hometown in Massachusetts, my middle school is now housing for seniors. That just happened like a week ago, so I feel really
That
old.
would be old high school in Portsmouth. I'm just wondering
Yeah.
if there are like public outreach strategies
Right.
or things that are working in other communities that we might be able to leverage or adopt if we identify needs within Portsmouth as well.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
Andy?
I was just going to, it's kind of related to this, but kind of going back to Ben's report. The elected officials event that Ben and his team put together was one of the best events I've been to in years. And it just had a lot of great ingredients and great lists. Ben did a fantastic job on that. But one of the things that came out of it for me is I thought it was a great way for council alumni, active politicians that are serving to interact and meet folks in a way that may not otherwise be accessible. And that benefits when items come up, when projects like the Sherburne campus come up, because now you can directly have those one-on-ones instead of sitting in the audience in the hall during council meetings. So it was a fantastic event. All of us should figure out ways to have more opportunities like that. It was great. Thank you.
It was.
Cool. Agreed.
Yeah, I would second that. It was a really good meeting.
Do that again, Ben, please.
Yeah.
Will do.
You're on.
I think dovetailing on the Chamber's efforts on the legislative priorities feels like it might be appropriate to have, city attorney came and presented the city's legislative priorities and what? Jane. Yeah.
We could bring Jane back, sure.
Yeah. That'd be great. So we'll work on that as well.
Yeah, she's a pro. I've been emailing her a lot lately.
She is on it. It is remarkable.
Cool. Okay, good. Perfect timing. We've got our today's guest presenter. We've got Ed Miles here today from the SBDC. I think we last heard from Ed probably around this time last year. So good morning and welcome, and thank you for joining us for another early session. And look forward to hearing what you guys are seeing and experiencing out as you're in the field talking with small businesses.
Yeah, good morning. So I zoomed in at exactly the right moment, I guess. So I'll just do a quick introduction for those who maybe don't know me or aren't extremely familiar with the organization, and then I'll move into what had been asked of me, which was sort of challenges, opportunities, and needs that we're seeing with the small businesses that we service. So again, I'm Ed Miles. I'm the Seacoast Regional Director for the New Hampshire Small Business Development Center. And the quick overview is we're a nonprofit extension service of the University of New Hampshire, funded by the state of New Hampshire through the Office of Business and Economic Affairs, Taylor Caswell's office, and also our major funding source is the SBA. So the small federal dollars come from the Small Business Administration. And the Seacoast region is a region that I cover with myself, Warren Daniel, and Amy Sterndale, our business advisors within the region, along with me. And I was asked to kind of share what we're seeing and with small businesses. I personally work with 250 or so small businesses in the region, as do Warren and Amy. So we're close to maybe 1,000 small businesses that are coming to us for assistance. At any given time, I might have 20 or 30 active of those 250 that have something going on. And really, I think the biggest thing, I'll just talk about challenges first, and not hearing the other part of the agenda. You might have already talked about some of this. I think staffing is probably the number one challenge that we're seeing. So workforce staffing, workforce housing is obviously an element of staffing, and then to a lesser extent, employee retention. I think what we're really seeing is that we're getting past survival business advising, so we're well beyond the how do I survive whatever the environment was these past 24 months or so, which was sort of very uncharacteristic, I think, for all of us. But for the businesses who survived and the ones who started up in the last 12 months or so, staffing, I would say, is the number one challenge. Opportunities, I think we're seeing just, again, for those who survived, we're really seeing that for the existing businesses that survived, they're saying their balance sheets never looked better. If they weathered the storm, they either did some hard decisions about adjustments to their staff. They got them to run leaner. They maybe were benefactors of some disaster relief funding that truly helped a lot of these businesses survive. And really, a common theme that we've heard is my balance sheet has never looked better. So that's opportunistically these businesses saying, how can I be responsible with this situation that I'm in now? And they are then challenged with, now that we are in this situation financially, we do need to maybe strategically staff back up, which is a problem. But we're really hearing sort of this common theme. I'm not going to say it's every business, but a lot have said, I've never been in better shape. Please help me be responsible with this current situation we're in. So that's some of the advising we've been doing. And then the other trend that we saw was that a lot of people who were employed said, I'm going to do this thing I always wanted to do. So fill in the blank. And maybe some of you have friends or family members, if you've seen that. They're trying to pull up alongside their current full-time position that idea or that business that they always wanted to start. So I think through the pandemic, a lot of people were sort of motivated to say, I can maybe start my own business. And actually in 2020, this is 23 now. In 2021, we saw a huge increase in business starts. So I think it was 71 new business starts in the state of New Hampshire in 21. 2022, I want to say we had, these are just the ones that we advise. It's not statewide, all new business starts. On the SBDC clients, we had 71 new business starts. I'm going from memory in 21, and I think it was 56 new business starts in 22. So it was down a little bit. There's still a lot of people saying, I really want to do that thing I've always wanted to do. And that's a lot of the advising that we've been doing. Some are more or less prepared to make that move. So the next thing that I was asked to talk about was need. And the ones who are not so prepared to make the move, and I kind of say keep your full-time job, there's a financial need. So there's commercial lending We have a great relationship with a number of banks in the Seacoast region. Because I'm the Seacoast Regional Director, part of my role is stakeholder relationship, as with this group here. But it also includes the commercial lending community. The SBDC, the New Hampshire SBDC, did a Bankers and Brews event at the Portsmouth Brewery a couple months back now. I think we had a dozen different commercial lenders represented. They all want to help these small businesses, the ones who are asking for capital to get a start. As long as they meet the what the underwriters determine ultimately as the algorithm for lending, and they seem like they have a great plan. What we've been doing a lot of is business plan creation, financial cash flow projections, the two main things that a commercial lender requires, and just helping these people kind of find their way to maybe starting their green. So I would say, just in general, that's kind of a big opening statement about challenges, opportunities, and needs. But I guess I can leave it to any questions or clarification just on that.
I think it's heartening to hear about all of the new business starts. Are there any common themes or different characteristics of those new businesses and the kinds of needs that they have as far as like physical office space, virtual infrastructure, staffing, et cetera? I'd love to hear a little bit more about those trends.
Okay, so yes, there is. Of course, every new business that would require brick and mortar says I want to be in Portsmouth, and then they realize. I see Sean Clancy smiling, and then they quickly realize that maybe two things. Maybe they should walk before they run. If they're a solopreneur, call it a solopreneur, single entity. Business starting, they might be starting it in their home and then maybe someday opening up in Portsmouth. But oftentimes we are introducing them, and Sean can attest to this, and Ben Van Camp. I make introductions to them, to the people who desire to be part of the Portsmouth economic community. I'll make introductions. Same thing in other communities as well. It's not exclusive to Portsmouth. I do represent the Seacoast region, so we have great relationships with all the EDCs and chambers in the region, and often making introductions there. So to answer your question, there's definitely a desire for brick and mortar. It's not always viable for those idea stage companies, but sometimes it is. And as far as a trend that you asked about, we really have seen a trend in, I'd say, healthcare professionals. I'm a nurse practitioner. And I want to open my own practice. I work at Fill in the Blank Hospital. I'd like to open my own practice. How do I do that? Mental health professionals, physical therapists, either full-time employees that want to go out on their own. So we've identified specifically and are piloting a program at that vertical market, which I'll just kind of generally categorize as healthcare professionals, to say, we realize that everybody's kind of zoomed out, even though I'm zooming in today. Webinars that are going on were more lightly attended when we say, New Hampshire SBDC is going to do a webinar on cash flow projections or something like that. Nobody wants to go to that anymore. So what we said is, what we're going to do is recognize that there's vertical markets that have common needs and try to create a cohort environment where we can, and the first one we're piloting with is businesses who would like to or identify in that healthcare professional vertical market, and we're creating a cohort where they can all come together and share ideas. They're either currently in business and have experience, or they want to start their new business within healthcare. And the one we're piloting is going to be in the Seacoast region, bringing together a group and just maybe bringing in a subject matter expert to speak to them, and giving them the opportunity to have an environment where they can share ideas, things that work, things that haven't worked. When do you go brick and mortar? Right? How long can you run it out of your home? What are the HIPAA requirements? What are the requirements in my home to run a therapy business out of my home? How are you dealing with online web clients when you're a mental health counselor? So we We're just now piloting that program to get more participation, rather than just kind of broadcasting that we're doing a webinar on healthcare. We're really taking a concerted effort and then kind of listening to what our clients are saying and just trying to pilot a little bit of a different environment to make it more enriching. So we have seen some vertical markets, and I'd say the number one really that we just across, not just the Seacoast, but all across New Hampshire, we've seen a lot in healthcare, businesses starting up. And I'm trying to think if there's there's always food service, and those are some of the dreams we have to dash most quickly. If people are really, really prepared, if they've never had experience before, to go into food service, we really challenge them to understand the idea and what that idea is rooted in. We never steal dreams, but we try to just shine a light on what they're trying to really accomplish. So food service is obviously another one. I guess those are the two biggies that we are seeing most recently are healthcare and food service. Kind of a long answer to your question. Did I answer it?
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. Thank you.
Other questions?
So I'll just make a comment, Ed. Thanks. This is great information and just some kudos. So Amy Sterndale, who is here in City Hall every Thursday. There's an office downstairs that the city provides for her, and she's great. I've known Warren a long time from my Durham days, and as I said, they're all part of the Seacoast Economic Development Stakeholders Group. We meet every other Tuesday, so there's a lot of good information, and the SBDC really does a great job, and a lot of what I think we're talking about in terms of our engagement with our city businesses and this database and the two-way communication, these guys know what they're doing. They really do it well, and I think Amy mentioned that when a client signs up with the SBDC, they're also committing to, is it taking a quarterly or 2 or 3 surveys of a year to let you all...
There's a biannual survey. Biannual survey. And we're measured, especially our major funding partner, the SBA, has 4 main metrics that they measure us on. So statistically, we keep track of new business starts, assistance with access to capital, jobs created, and jobs retained. So that employment and retention. So we require, that's all we really require of our clients, is to answer the surveys. It's funded by taxpayer dollars. It's never a charge to our clients. I have some that want weekly phone calls every Wednesday at 11 a.m. And it's as much as they do or don't use our services, it's not just startups. It's not just how do I start a coffee shop. It's the full life cycle of the business. I just was in the Fosters yesterday. I can't talk about it. We have confidentiality, but if it's something want to expand into a new community with a business, we assist with that. I currently am in Portsmouth. I want to expand into Dover. We do that. I'm in a 10,000 square foot manufacturing facility. I want to move into a 28,000 square foot manufacturing facility. How do I make this decision, quantitatively and then just by process of commercial lending? And then I have, and another recent trend is, how do I responsibly either wind my business down, prepare it for sale, or do a generational transfer or an equity ownership transfer to my employees? So there's another thing we've seen in the pandemic is, I think I'm done doing this thing I've been doing so long. I want to be responsible on how I exit. So it's we offer full life cycle services. That's the TV commercial I'm getting.
Nice. Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed. I have a question just on what you're hearing from your clients in terms of availability of capital, maybe the rising interest rate environment and how that has impacted them or not. It sounds like there's a lot of strength there, but is there more data or what are you hearing?
So I've not seen the client shying away from the interest rate to fund either the growth or the start of the business. The banks will loan the money at the higher interest rates, so they're not afraid to loan it at the higher interest rates. I personally can't say that I have a large enough sample set to give you a direct answer on that, except to say that I haven't seen interest rates on either side of the equation make a client either stop, or a bank obviously want to lend at higher rates and make more money. But the thing that I will say is that commercial lenders, especially in the Seacoast region, that's my area that I have information on, are willing to work with startups. And that's kind of, post-pandemic in every category. Even if you're a full-service startup, if you have experience, you have a good business plan, you have cash flow projections, and you're credit worthy, banks are willing to take a look. And when it gets to the underwriters, that's when it really comes down to the algorithm they use for lending, like I said before. But they're at least willing to listen and take a look. And anything, I'm just going to throw out a number because there's a couple of banks that are being aggressive at less than $50,000 loans, which is a lot of the solopreneurs that we deal with are looking for less than $50,000. I'm not going to say they're more lenient in those metrics that they use, but they definitely take a harder look. And again, if there's creditworthiness and a good plan and some experience within the industry, then I've been successful within the Seacoast region. Statistically, I think myself and my business advisors in 22 had participation in helping out with about $15 million in commercial lending. I personally, I'm kind of newer to it. I helped maybe $3.5 million of that. So there's definitely, I'm not going to say the money's loose, but there's definitely lending going on in the Seacoast region, and especially and including startups.
That's great. I kind of have a second half to that question, and that's just in the inflationary environment. Are you hearing much in terms of rising cost for doing business and how that's impacted them?
Yeah, I mean, I made a statement earlier about balance sheets looking better than ever for some businesses, but I have seen the pressure of both of the wage increase pressure, and I don't want to throw out the buzzword everybody's using, but it's obviously supply chain. I would just call it cost of goods. Supply is there, but cost of supplies. I'm thinking in my mind specifically about a pizza restaurant that I deal with, who the wages that are commanded by the staff alongside of the cost of goods to make a pizza, for example, in one very specific example, really have made the margins extremely thin. And it's, I don't know the last time anybody in this room ordered a pizza, but if you want pizzas delivered, it's going to cost you $50. I mean, when did that happen? And that's, it's true, it's going to cost $50. And that's, so I don't think that, I think as a consumer, I know that on a Friday night, I'm just going to swipe my card to do it. But I mean, I think that there has been some recognition, and that's one very specific example. But I think that cost of goods, I'm going to think of another example. I'm giving you a long answer, but I hope you appreciate it. I have a distribution company, called a pick, pack, ship company that has a very unique product in a very niche industry, but he orders raw materials from China. And he gets raw materials by the container load from China, and then has this a business where he employs 8 or 10 employees, and they have a warehouse environment. He, because of the specific to the supply chain issue, found himself having to buy more stock more than he would have. So now he's in a very, I'm not going to say a cash crunch situation, but he's holding more inventory than he wanted to at this time of the year. This is in New Hampshire, in the seacoast of New Hampshire, and maybe has, I don't know what the surplus is, but he had to fight to get top production time in China, pay a premium to get his containers shipped over the water. All these shipping companies were literally adding $10,000 of premium payment to get your container to LA to get it to come across the country. That's on top of what the raw material inside it was costing him. So he was in this situation where he had to buy a bunch of stuff. Now he's in a surplus situation where he's saying, I have to discount my pricing in order to push through the inventory that I was kind of forced to buy. So once again, I tend to carry on a bit, but those are two very, kind of polarizing examples of what's happening in that, to answer that question. hopefully I answered the question.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic. Thank you. Anyone else?
And he, this small distribution company, I mean, he has enough of a sense to say that, yes, I am a micro example within New Hampshire, but he actually hypothesizes that nationwide, there's going to be good deals to be had throughout 2023 because many durable good manufacturers, or many manufacturers are in the same situation where they are going to just have to give deals to move inventory. So he was just kind of saying that if you have money in 2023, it's a year where you might, as a consumer, start to see some good deals.
Great. Interesting.
I'd like to have mine. It's cool.
Thank you very much. I don't think we've got anything further, but we appreciate all the work and the data, and we'll be sure to stay in close touch over the course of the year as you're surveying folks those 2 times.
And we're going to be issuing our annual report, which will have all the, not off the top of my head, data points for 2022.
Yeah.
So we get that out to all the EDCs and chambers, and there'll be printed copies of it in a PDF version. So we'll have that issued here shortly.
Fantastic.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ed.
Thanks, Ed.
Awesome.
All right, thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye. That was great.
Andy?
I just had one comment. I was reminded by Ed's presentation. So they have an annual report. REDC has an annual report. We have our report.
Andy.
Sorry. With all that, is that something we can kind of like put in the hopper for the data committee as a starting point? It's just so hard, through that survey process with BRNE, it takes a lot of effort to generate your own data.
Right.
And there's so much data. Oh, and Craig Welch brought his housing report in too. And there's all these wonderful groups doing, economic development in New Hampshire already. And then the second kind of question I had is like, how would the data committee kind of choose? Could we just offer it up as a beginning point? Could we just offer it up as a library? That folks can maybe access through the city website or that kind of thing. I mean, a lot of us, because of our occupations, it just comes across our desk. But I think a lot of folks in our communities, it doesn't come across their desk.
Yeah. So there's a lot of data. I like the library idea, and I think that's what we're trying to build. But at the end of the day, it can be a lot of data, right?
Yeah.
And as we saw with the survey, it's a lot of information. So what keeps me up at night is how to get it distilled into information that we can then actually use, right, to inform decisions, to inform the EDC, and so that's a challenge. And what I've been thinking, I'll just say, what I've been thinking about is interns and how to find other resources, other arms and legs that can pull this together and with some guidance, but not a lot of guidance, but some guidance to say, here's what we're trying to understand, so that we can then communicate it out, right? Whether it's to the business community, to the overall community in Portsmouth, because to your point, most people don't spend the time to understand it. So that's the opportunity here, for sure.
I mean, these reports, like the SEDS report from RD, unbelievable, super high quality. A lot of time and money has been spent on them. Be great to at least just give it a platform, for this from the city of Portsmouth and EDC.
Counselor?
Yeah, well, sounds like a data mining problem, and there certainly are amazing tools to do data mining. I don't know if we have access to some of that stuff. Certainly Google and Microsoft and Facebook, they have incredible tools. I don't know if some of that is available to an organization like this.
I could check with our IT department now that we have one.
I can dust off my notes, but before the pandemic, I had engaged with somebody, I think at UNH School of Public Policy, around the data modeling for what percentage of tax dollar goes to what. Remember, we had talked about this, but there might be an opportunity probably not for this year, but to partner with the school and work with graduating students as a capstone project. Like, how do you aggregate this data and make it useful for public consumption? So you could potentially partner with the school, get folks that work on this for a capstone, and then have a sustainable model that you could use going forward.
There you go.
I had a conversation with UNH yesterday, UNH Cooperative Extension, and they mentioned the same thing, and you get this graduate level student as opposed to an undergrad, and it's
And their purpose is to build you something that you can sustain and use going forward, instead of like, here's what I have now, what can I get from it? But
right, and that's what's in it for that student, is to really get into the real world, if you will, and move something forward, not just, yeah.
It's a great idea.
So maybe we talk to the same people, but I'll look in my email and see who I had worked with.
Yeah, that'd be great if you, I'll run with it. Thank you.
Definitely think some potential, and if we can find a way even just to get some of the key information out there. I mean, as part of our BR&D report out to the council, just, I mean, all of this information is out there, and you know, we're capturing a good group with the BR&E, and then I'm sure they're hearing either from the same or maybe a broadened group locally and statewide that just helps inform what's going on from a housing perspective. I mean, so many other issues we touch upon, so when we come to a place where we want to advocate for something, we have some data to back it up.
The challenge isn't in getting the data, it's in normalization, extraction, and making sure that you can actually gain insights.
Yeah, I'll just share with the group, since we do have a few minutes, with the regional group. There's an amazing amount of information out there. This is why we're going to put together a marketing campaign, if you will, to employers to be able to distill down what are the best practices for attracting and retaining talent, because that's what they need. And there's so much information out there. It comes down to how do we distill it, how do we package it, how do we present it so that it's accessible to the small business owner who's trying, who has all this money and wants to grow and expand. They don't have time to pour through these amazing reports. So that's an opportunity for us in economic development, and maybe for the EDC in terms of on behalf of Portsmouth businesses, but we certainly can do it across the region. But yeah, I think that's what I'm seeing is our opportunity moving forward, and so that's really what I've been talking to my colleagues about.
Great. Ben?
On a different note, I know it's come up a number of times in discussion here at this group, the changing of the office environment and what that means to, and I just thought I'd share. Yesterday I had the opportunity, along with the mayor, to attend the ribbon cutting for Baker Newman Noyes, the CPA firm that's about 300 employees from Portland down to the Boston, Woburn area. And they just moved into new office space. They moved from Pease to the new Kane property. There's about 50 people that are going to call that office home. There's 4 permanent desks in that space. So it was just staggering to me, the leap they took into this hotel model of you can book a desk, and there's partners working next to juniors. It's a very interesting model, and they have a wonderful good thing for Portsmouth is that we are essentially located in their footprint. So they built a wonderful training room there for about 50 people, and they'll be bringing in like all their teammates to basically have Portsmouth be this place they come for their education and continuing ed. But very high tech, very well done. It would be perhaps worthwhile to take a walk through as a group or individually. I think they would be open to that, but it's definitely eye-opening, the transformation in their model, and I'm curious to see if other professional service firms particularly follow that suit.
Even with the downsizing of Liberty Mutual, I think everybody saw they're consolidating all of the offices in Portsmouth and putting Dover West on the market. So I think it's not just the small firms that are looking at that footprint, but the larger ones as well.
Yeah. Ben, do you know what the square footage they left was? And
I don't know what they left. I did not ask that. I believe I asked their square footage. I want to say it's about 7,500 square feet.
Yeah.
Maybe that's wrong. No, I think that's right.
That sounds, yeah.
Is this the building downtown or out on Commerce Way?
Out on Commerce Way, yeah.
Is this the building that we toured?
It's the one with Sheehan Finney and the IRS is upstairs now. 75.
I think we were at Novacure, which was just next door.
Yeah, neighbors to that.
Yeah, was that we went to one which was all little pods where employees would reserve it for a number of hours
I
that
think
they
that
were
was
coming in.
one of the many Liberty
Liberty
spaces.
buildings.
on
Oh,
the Seacoast.
yeah, I missed that one.
It's the old Newmarket software. That was my first job out of college, was Newmarket software.
Right.
Oh. Thank you for sharing that. Well, I think we breezed through everything this morning. Not that we breezed through, but I think we covered a lot of ground. So maybe give everyone some time back, but we've got time for public comment. So seeing as there's no one from the public here, I guess if there's anything not on the agenda that anyone wants to cover, Joe?
As we covered in our retreat, I'm now going to be putting EDC updates on the council agenda. So I have that just as a verbal update. So I'll just kind of highlight this meeting, highlight our retreat, and if there's anything else that anyone would like, please feel free to email me. But I will now be doing that at least monthly.
Awesome.
And then whenever the BRE committee gets together and decides that they are ready to kind of present to the council, just, 10, 15-minute, 20-minute presentation with some of the highlights, just please let me know, and we'll get that on the agenda for you.
Perfect. Fantastic. Thank you.
If I could just bring one topic up. We talked about, in your update, we talked about the outdoor dining. And one of the things that I've noted, and I've been tapped on the shoulder a number of times, and of course, a lot of people have seen the letters that have been circulating on, that font of legitimate journalism, the Facebook. There seems to be a real problem with a certain number of retailers in feeling like their voices were not heard. And I'm just simply asking the question. I have no direct knowledge of any of that. I'm just, are we comfortable, because obviously they contribute a great deal to the economic vitality of downtown. Do we feel that there's a vulnerability there, or do we feel that they've been taken into account appropriately during all this, and is it just the usual noise?
I think that our discussion was that they could have access to the sidewalk space as well, in the same way. Beyond that, I'm not sure that we do more.
I think to expand upon that, we definitely are looking at our sidewalk obstacle permit, which would allow clothing racks and certain things. Part of the discussion of expanding the Market Square redesign project, which was supposed to happen but then delayed because of the 400th anniversary, is again looking at potentially expanding sidewalks, making more walkability downtown, granting more access to retailers also. When we talk about some of the letters that are circulating, some of those letters were from last year and were not resubmitted this year. I think the big part that we look at as a council when we talk about outdoor dining was, again, we had roughly over 200 emails, the majority of them from residents supporting outdoor dining. So I'd like to make it very clear, it's not one industry versus another. Part of our job is to really weigh the desires of residents, and the desires of residents were to continue outdoor dining and to look at long haul policy of that.
If I could just add one more thought. We've heard both sides of the story, that there are businesses that want to make sure they're treated equitably relative to the dining establishments. But we also heard from several retailers that seem to have benefited from outdoor dining. So there are two sides to that coin as well.
Ben and then Andy.
I just want to add to this that the mayor and I and a couple other city councilors have had some conversations about, is there something special we can do for the retail community to sort of express our love for them and give them an opportunity to shine, and what that looks like and how that comes to be is pretty much in its early stages of discussion, but it may be an event, it may be a week or something like that where we do something special for them. So there's some conversations going on right now. We'll see where they head, but I do think showing our gratitude and support for such a vibrant part of our downtown community is very important, and I think those retailers certainly need a little bit of love. So.
Thanks, Ben. Indy?
In addition to the two sides of the coin, I think there's a third and fourth side of the coin, too. We have a lot of first floor and second floor office tenants downtown that I'm sure Bob and I both hear complaints about the loss of parking spaces due to outdoor dining. And then we also have, folks that are living in apartments on second, third, and fourth floors of buildings, too. And I think where it affects the office tenant is for 1 hour meetings that clients are coming in and then clients are saying we can't find parking. And of course you hear those complaints in July, and where there's obvious crunch and the parking, the High Hanover garage has a full sign in front of it. But that's the other organisms in the ecosystem is trying to figure that out. And I'd also just put forward other cities have figured this out. I would encourage, the council and all of us to, look at other examples. There's a lot of, European examples of outdoor dining. Canada, other places that have somehow figured this out. But and then having said all that, I've benefited and love, being able to have a beer or have a appetizer outside downtown. It's been great.
Balance. I think that's like everything. Right. Yeah. So taking all that. Sean?
Just a reminder, there's a vote Monday night on the EDC alternate position.
Great.
I think hopefully it'll go well.
Good. Okay. Well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. If nothing further, we'll confirm our next meeting date is March 3rd. It'll be shortly after the business or economic forum that the Chamber's hosting earlier that week. But nothing further. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second. Thanks, everybody. All in
Thank you.
favor?
Aye.